What happens when a new police chief gets slapped in the face by her own officer on day one? At 7:15 a.m. in Silver Creek, Colorado, Naomi Brooks wore an old windbreaker when Officer Garrett Hobbs violently attacked her. Hobbs thought she was homeless and threw her out, not knowing she was his new 45-year-old chief on a blind test. Naomi took the pain to gather perfect proof so she could clean up her bad police department. But with the security cameras erased and young witness Leo Carter threatened for filming the slap, Naomi faces a deadly fight. Can she reveal the truth before these dirty cops destroy all the evidence? 3 weeks before that slap, Naomi Brooks sat alone in a rented office above a laundromat. The office smelled like old carpet and burnt coffee. A window unit rattled every few minutes, then went quiet. Naomi had 22 years on the job, and every one of those years showed on her hands. Her knuckles were rough. Her nails were cut short and plain. She kept one photo on her desk, turned face down most days. It showed a young officer named Naomi standing next to her father, Sergeant Elijah Brooks, both in uniform. He died 11 years ago, shot answering a call. That should have been routine. She never talked about that night. She just worked harder. After the funeral, Naomi almost quit the force fully. Her mother begged her to walk away, to choose something safer. But an old captain named Walter Simmons sat with her one evening instead. "Your father believed the badge could mean something good," Walter said. "Don't let it die with him." Walter became her mentor over the next 10 years, teaching her patience above all else. "Loud people get noticed," he told her once. "Quiet people get the truth." Naomi took that lesson and built her entire career around it. She learned to sit in rooms and listen long after everyone else stopped talking. She learned that broken departments rarely announce themselves with obvious villains. Instead, they hid behind paperwork, tired excuses, and officers too scared to speak up. Naomi had built a name for herself the hard way. She cleaned up a broken drug unit in Denver in 19 months. She testified against 3 bad commanders in Pueblo, and none of them kept their jobs. People who worked with her said the same thing over and over. She listened more than she talked. She never raised her voice. When she did speak, people stopped what they were doing to hear her. Her phone buzzed. It was Deputy Commissioner Ray Alvarez, calling from the state office in Denver. "Silver Creek needs you," he said. Their own watch board asked for outside help. Complaints against the Silver Creek Police Department had piled up for 6 years. 28 too much force complaints. Only one led to any punishment. A woman named Carol Jennings lost her son in a police stop that nobody would explain. Files went missing. Witnesses stopped answering calls. Officers closed ranks like a fist. "I want you to go in blind," Alvarez said. No warning. No introduction. Naomi's new appointment made her the chief of the entire department. But the board wanted proof first, real proof, gathered from the inside. She would arrive as an unknown woman before anyone knew her face. Only Alvarez and one board member would carry her sealed appointment letter. That letter sat locked in a plain manila envelope, brought under separate cover. It carried the city seal, the mayor's signature, and today's exact date. Naomi didn't argue. She had done blind tests before, though never at this size. "Give me 3 weeks," she told him. "I want to know this town first." She spent those 3 weeks learning Silver Creek from the outside in. She sat in the diner across from the station, drinking coffee slowly. She watched patrol cars roll out at odd hours, never quite on schedule. She watched one officer in certain, a big man named Garrett Hobbs. Hobbs stood 6'3", with a jaw like a slab of granite. He wore his boots polished to a mirror shine every single morning. He drove a black truck worth $61,000 for $100, financed on a patrolman's pay. Other officers moved out of his way in the hallway without being asked. Hobbs liked to say he ran a tight ship, and he meant every word. He believed rules existed to protect good people from bad ones. He never once asked who decided which people counted as good. Hobbs grew up 2 towns over, the son of a state trooper named Dale Hobbs Sr. His father taught him one lesson above all others, repeated at every dinner table. "Respect is earned by how a person looks and acts," his father always said. Young Garrett believed that lesson fully, and he never once questioned it. He joined the force at 24, eager to prove his father right. Over 14 years, that belief hardened into something rigid and cold. Hobbs started sorting people within seconds of meeting them, almost without thinking. Clean clothes meant respect. Worn clothes meant suspicion, plain and simple. He never saw this sorting as prejudice. He saw it as instinct, sharpened by experience. He told rookies that instinct kept everyone safe, including the people he judged. Nobody at the station ever challenged that instinct, not once, not in 14 years. Naomi noticed something else about Hobbs during her third week of watching. He in person pushed the department to buy a new camera system last spring. He bragged about it at a town meeting, calling it total being responsible. He didn't know the system backed up to a state server automatically. He thought the only copy lived on a hard drive in his own office. That single detail would matter more than anyone in Silver Creek could guess. On a cold Tuesday morning, Naomi made her choice. She put on an old gray windbreaker, the kind sold at any thrift store. The zipper stuck halfway up and left a gap at her collar. She carried a canvas bag with a thermos, a folded newspaper, and nothing else. Inside her jacket pocket, sewn in by a tailor 3 days earlier, sat a small backup recorder. It was barely bigger than a house key, and nobody could see it. At 7:15 a.m., Naomi walked toward the side entrance of the Silver Creek police station. Frost still clung to the metal railing by the door. The air smelled like diesel exhaust from an idling patrol car nearby. A radio crackled inside the lobby, spitting out a string of numbers. Naomi meant to ask the desk officer a simple question about visiting hours. She never got the chance to open her mouth. Garrett Hobbs stepped out from behind a parked cruiser, blocking her path. "This is a restricted area," he said. "You need to leave now." Naomi kept her voice calm and even. "I just need 2 minutes, officer." Hobbs looked her up and down, taking in the worn jacket and canvas bag. His jaw tightened. A vein rose along the side of his neck. "We don't do handouts here," he said. "Move along before I make you." Naomi didn't argue. She simply repeated her request one more time. That was enough for Hobbs. His hand shot out before she could step back. The slap landed across her left cheek with a flat, ugly crack. Her head snapped sideways. Her ears rang with a high, thin whine. She stumbled into the railing, catching herself with one gloved hand. For 3 full seconds, neither of them said a single word. A teenage boy named Leo Carter stood across the street, waiting for the morning bus. He had his phone up before the slap even landed, filming out of habit. Leo's hands shook, but he kept the camera steady, recording every second. He was 17 years old, 6 weeks from finishing high school. His mother worked 2 jobs, and Leo filmed things for his own safety. He had learned that lesson from an older cousin the hard way. 3 years earlier, that same cousin had been stopped without any real reason. No phone had captured that stop. No proof existed except his cousin's word. Nothing happened to the officer involved. Nothing ever seemed to happen to officers. Leo promised himself, after that day, he would never let another moment go unrecorded. His teacher, Mr. Ellison, once told the class that small actions carry real weight. Leo hadn't got that lesson fully until the morning he pressed record. Standing across that street, his hands cold, his heart pounding, he finally got. Hobbs grabbed Naomi's arm and shoved her toward the sidewalk, hard. "I said move," he barked. "Don't make me arrest you for trespassing." Naomi's cheek burned red, then began to swell just below the eye. She tasted copper at the corner of her mouth, sharp and metallic. She did not raise her voice. She did not fight back. She simply looked at Hobbs with a stillness that made him pause. That stillness unsettled Hobbs more than any shout could have. He had expected fear, or maybe tears, or maybe angry words. Instead, Naomi studied his face the way a doctor studies an X-ray. "You'll remember this morning," she said quietly, "longer than you think." Hobbs laughed, a short, sharp bark with no real humor in it. "Get off my sidewalk," he said, and turned back toward the station door. Leo lowered his phone slowly, his heart slamming against his ribs. He had 11 seconds of clean video, time-stamped at 7:16 a.m. He didn't know the woman's name. He only knew what he had seen. A grown man had struck a stranger for standing near a doorway. Leo slipped his phone into his pocket and started walking fast. He didn't look back at the station, not even once. Naomi walked 3 blocks before she let herself lean against a brick wall. Her hands shook slightly, a small, human reaction she allowed herself for 10 seconds. Then she straightened her spine and checked the recorder sewn into her jacket. The tiny device blinked once, confirming 11 minutes and 4 seconds of audio. She had what she needed to begin, though not what she needed to finish. She pulled out an old flip phone and typed a short message to Alvarez. Day 1 complete, she wrote. Confirmed pattern. Moving to phase 2. She did not mention the slap. Numbers and facts mattered more than pain. Back at the station, Hobbs told the story his own way, laughing it off. Some transient tried to wander in, he told Sergeant Dale Whitfield. Handled it. Whitfield nodded along, the way he always nodded along with Hobbs. Whitfield ran the evidence room and controlled who saw which files. Whitfield and Hobbs had worked together for 9 years, tight as brothers. They split overtime pay between them, filed for hours they never worked. Over 4 years, records would later show, they billed the city $41,000 in false hours. Nobody questioned it, because nobody dared question either one of them. Officers who asked too many questions found themselves transferred to night patrol. Others simply learned to look away and kept their heads down. Naomi returned the next morning wearing the same windbreaker, the same worn boots. This time, she carried a clipboard and asked for the shift roster. The desk officer, a nervous rookie named Priya Shah, hesitated before answering. I need a supervisor to approve that, Priya said, glancing toward the back office. Naomi nodded and waited, standing quietly near the wall for 11 minutes. Nobody offered her a chair. Nobody offered her water. She used those 11 minutes to notice everything around her. A missing persons poster, faded and curling, still hung by the door. It showed a young man named Marcus Jennings, last seen 14 months earlier. Carol Jennings, his mother, had called the station 43 times asking for updates. The case file, Naomi would later learn, had not been touched in months. Nobody in that building seemed to remember his name at all. When Priya finally returned, she said the roster request was denied for now. Naomi thanked her politely and left without another word. Outside, she called Alvarez again, keeping her voice low and steady. I need the Jennings file, she said. Something is very wrong here. Alvarez promised to pull whatever records existed at the county level. He also warned her to be careful, though he knew she already was. 3 days later, Leo Carter's video reached someone outside his usual circle. His older sister, Denise, worked as a producer for a local news station. Leo showed her the clip on his phone, still shaking slightly, as he did. Denise watched it twice, her jaw tightening with each replay. Who was this woman? She asked. Do you know her name? Leo shook his head. He had never seen the woman before that morning. Denise backed up the video to a cloud folder right away, without telling anyone. She had covered police stories before, and she trusted nothing left on one device. She told Leo to keep quiet, until she could verify a few details. Leo agreed, though keeping quiet felt harder with every passing hour. He kept glancing over his shoulder on his walk to school. He couldn't shake the feeling that someone had noticed him filming. He was right to feel that way. Whitfield had noticed him. A security camera across the street, one Hobbs didn't control, caught Leo filming too. Whitfield reviewed the footage 2 days later, out of simple habit. He recognized Leo from the high school, where his own nephew also studied. Whitfield mentioned it to Hobbs, over coffee, keeping his tone casual. Kid across the street had his phone out, Whitfield said. Might be nothing. Hobbs didn't think it was nothing. His stomach tightened, just slightly. He told himself he had done nothing wrong, only enforced the rules. Still, he asked Whitfield to have a friendly word with the boy. Whitfield found Leo outside his own house 2 evenings later. He leaned against his cruiser, arms crossed, blocking the porch steps. Heard you like taking videos, Whitfield said. That a hobby of yours? Leo's mouth went dry. His pulse thudded hard in his ears. I don't know what you mean, he said, his voice thinner than he wanted. Whitfield smiled without warmth, the kind of smile that promised nothing good. Delete whatever you filmed downtown Tuesday morning, he said. For your own good. He tapped the hood of his cruiser twice, then walked back to the car. Leo stood frozen on his own porch for almost a full minute. He called Denise the moment Whitfield's taillights disappeared around the corner. "They know," he said, his voice cracking on the second word. Denise told him the footage was already safe, already backed up twice over. Still, she warned him to be careful, to avoid walking alone at night. Leo nodded to himself on the phone, even though she couldn't see him. He didn't sleep much that night, replaying the slap over and over. Meanwhile, Naomi kept building her case, from the outside, piece by piece. She reviewed public arrest records, cross-checking names against overtime logs. She found a pattern of stops centered in 3 low-income neighborhoods. 91% of use-of-force reports came from those same 3 neighborhoods. Yet those neighborhoods made up only 28% of the town's population. The math told a story that no press release ever would. She also found Carol Jennings, the mother from the missing poster. Carol lived in a small rented house with peeling yellow paint. She answered the door slowly, her eyes wary from years of disappointment. "I've talked to reporters before," Carol said. "Nothing ever changes." Naomi didn't argue with her. She simply asked to hear about Marcus. Carol talked for 2 hours, her voice cracking more than once. Marcus had called his mother the night he disappeared, sounding scared. He said 2 officers had stopped him near the old mill road. He never called back. His car was found abandoned 3 days later. The official file listed his case as voluntary disappearance, adult male. Carol didn't believe that for one single second. Not then, not now. Naomi wrote every detail down in a small notebook she carried. Before leaving, Naomi asked Carol one more question, gentle but direct. "Did anyone else see Marcus stop that night?" she asked. Carol nodded slowly. "A neighbor did. Old man named Frank Delgado. He won't talk to police, though?" Naomi found Frank 2 days later, sitting on his porch, with a cane across his knees. Frank had refused 3 separate officers, who asked him the same question, over the years. "Why would I talk to you?" Frank said. "You're one of them too." Naomi sat down on the porch step, without being invited, and simply waited. She waited nearly 20 minutes, before Frank finally spoke again, quieter this time. "I saw a black truck," Frank said. "Same one I still see around town." Hobbs drove a black truck. Frank's memory matched the vehicle exactly, down to a dented bumper. Naomi thanked him and wrote his statement down carefully, word for word. She also pulled bank records, through Alvarez, using the board's legal authority. The records showed Hobbs and Whitfield splitting overtime payments that never matched actual shifts worked. Over 4 years, the gap in the numbers added up to real, written-down money, sitting in plain sight. Nobody had ever cross-checked those numbers, because nobody had ever thought to look. That night, Naomi sat in her rented room, spreading papers across the bed. She lined up overtime records, force reports, and Carol's timeline side by side. A pattern emerged that made her stomach turn cold and hard. Hobbs and Whitfield appeared in the paperwork near almost every troubling case. She needed one more piece before she could bring this to Alvarez. She needed proof that reached higher than 2 bad officers acting alone. The next morning, Naomi returned to the station one final time. This time, she wore the same windbreaker, but carried a different bag. Inside that bag sat the sealed manila envelope, brought by courier at dawn. She walked straight past the front desk, ignoring Priya's startled protest. She walked into the watch commander's office, without waiting to be announced. Captain Owen Reyes looked up from his desk, annoyed at the interruption. "Who let you back here?" Reyes demanded, already reaching for his radio. Naomi set the envelope on his desk and said nothing at first. Reyes opened it slowly, his eyes moving across the letter inside. His face went pale, then flushed red, then pale again within seconds. The letter named Naomi Brooks as the new chief, effective right away. It carried the mayor's signature and the state board's official seal. Word spread through the station in under 4 minutes. Officers stopped mid-talk, turning to stare at the woman in the worn jacket. Priya's hand flew to her mouth by the front desk. Hobbs stood near the coffee station, a mug frozen halfway to his lips. His face drained of color, as realizing who she was hit him like cold water. The room fell fully silent, except for the hum of the old air conditioner. Nobody moved for several seconds. The clock on the wall ticked audibly. A radio in the corner crackled once, then went quiet again. Hobbs set his mug down, with a hand that wasn't quite steady. He remembered every word he had said 3 days earlier, all of it. "If I had known who you were," he started, his voice already falling apart. Naomi turned to face him, her expression calm, almost gentle. "That's exactly the problem," she said. "You shouldn't have needed to know." Hobbs opened his mouth, then closed it, finding no good answer. Naomi addressed the room next, her voice steady and clear. "I am your new chief," she said. "I am also the woman Officer Hobbs struck 4 days ago." Gasps rippled through the room, quiet but clear. Reyes sank back into his chair, rubbing his face with both hands. A young officer near the window, named Marcus Webb, raised his hand slowly. "Chief, some of us reported concerns before," he said. Nobody listened. Naomi turned to him directly. "I'm listening now. Give me names after this meeting." Webb nodded, relief showing plainly on his tired face for the first time in months. Priya Shah stood near the back wall, tears already gathering in her eyes. She had wanted to speak up so many times and never found the courage. Watching Naomi stand there now gave her something she hadn't felt in years. Hope. Naomi asked for the security footage from that Tuesday morning without raising her voice. Whitfield, standing near the hallway, felt his chest tighten instantly. He had in person deleted the local file the same afternoon as the slap. "The system had a glitch that day," Whitfield said quickly. "Footage didn't save." Naomi looked at him for a long moment, unblinking. "Convenient," she said, "especially since Officer Hobbs installed that system himself." Hobbs had bragged about Total being responsible at a town meeting last spring. He never imagined that same system would help convict him instead. Naomi already knew about the state server backup, thanks to Alvarez's earlier research. She simply hadn't mentioned it yet, waiting for exactly this moment. "The state keeps its own copy," she said. "You can't erase that one." Whitfield's face went the color of old paper, drained of all blood. That evening, state technicians pulled the backup footage from a secure server. It showed everything, time-stamped and untouched, starting at 7:14 a.m. It showed Hobbs blocking Naomi's path, then striking her across the face. It showed her stumble, catch herself, and stand back up without complaint. Alvarez watched the footage twice, his jaw set tight with anger. He forwarded a copy to the prosecutor's office before midnight. Leo's phone video matched the state footage almost exactly, angle for angle. Denise released her station's report the following morning, footage included. The story spread fast, first through Silver Creek, then across the entire state. Reporters called the station so often that Priya unplugged her own desk phone. Carol Jennings watched the news from her small living room, tears sliding down her face. For the first time in 14 months, someone official was finally listening. The governor's office issued a statement, within 2 days, praising Naomi's careful work. National outlets picked up the story soon after, calling it a model for reform. A cable news anchor described Naomi as the chief who lets silence do the talking. Naomi never watched those interviews herself. She stayed focused on the department instead. She told her staff that headlines fade fast, but real change takes years of steady work. Not everyone in Silver Creek welcomed the attention right away, though most later came around. A few longtime residents grumbled that outsiders shouldn't judge a town they barely knew. Naomi listened to those complaints too, patiently, the same way she listened to everything else. "I'm not here to judge this town," she told one town hall meeting. "I'm here to serve it." Slowly, meeting by meeting, the grumbling quieted, replaced by something closer to trust. Naomi ordered a full audit of every case Hobbs and Whitfield had touched. She reopened the Jennings file within her first 48 hours as chief. Cell tower records placed Hobbs near the old Mill Road the night Marcus vanished. Those records had existed the entire time, buried under a stack of paperwork. Nobody had ever bothered to request them, until Naomi demanded it herself. The truth had been waiting there for 14 long months, untouched. Hobbs was arrested 6 days after the slap in front of the same station. He didn't resist. He didn't say much of anything at all. His jaw, once set in constant defiance, hung slack and empty. Whitfield was arrested the same afternoon, on charges of evidence tampering. Both men lost their badges for good, along with their pensions. Neither one ever set foot inside a police station again. Hobbs stood trial 8 months later in a small county courthouse. Naomi attended every single day, sitting quietly in the second row. She never spoke to reporters outside the courthouse, keeping her focus on the evidence. The jury watched the state server footage 3 separate times before reaching their decision. They convicted Hobbs on charges of assault and evidence tampering, unanimous after 4 hours. The judge sentenced him to 18 months, along with a lifetime ban from law enforcement work. Whitfield took a plea deal, testifying against Hobbs in exchange for a lighter sentence. He avoided prison time, but lost his pension fully, along with his good name in town. Neither man ever apologized in public, though Hobbs wrote one private letter to Naomi. Naomi read it once, folded it carefully, and placed it in a drawer. She never told anyone what it said. Some things stay private, even after victory. Captain Reyes kept his job, but only after a hard, honest talk. Naomi asked him directly why he never questioned Hobbs and Whitfield. "I told myself it wasn't my job to watch other people's work," he admitted. Naomi didn't yell at him. She simply let the silence sit there. "It's everyone's job," she finally said. "That's what a badge means." Reyes nodded slowly, and from that day forward, he meant it. Priya Shah, the nervous young desk officer, became one of Naomi's strongest allies. She had noticed the missing files for months, but never felt safe speaking up. Naomi promoted her to a training role within her first month as chief. "You saw the truth before I even walked through that door," Naomi told her. "Next time, you won't have to wait for someone else to ask." Priya cried a little, then nodded and got back to work. Marcus Webb, the young officer, who spoke up during that first meeting, became a training lead. He built a new intake process, one that flagged repeated complaints automatically instead of burying them. "We should have caught this years ago," Webb told Naomi during one late review session. "You caught it now," Naomi replied. "That's what matters going forward." Webb later said that meeting changed how he saw his entire career, not just his job. He stopped staying quiet when something felt wrong, even when speaking up felt uncomfortable. Other officers noticed the shift too, slowly building a culture where silence no longer felt safest. Leo Carter received a formal letter of thanks from the department itself. Naomi visited his house in person, still wearing her old gray windbreaker sometimes. "You did something brave," she told him. "Most adults wouldn't have." Leo shrugged, embarrassed, but his mother beamed, with quiet pride beside him. Denise later aired a follow-up story about Leo, calling him the boy who didn't look away. Leo later enrolled in a journalism program, inspired by that single morning. A year later, Naomi launched a new youth program inside the department itself. She called it the Bridge Program, pairing teenagers with officers for open, honest talks. Leo joined as the program's very first youth ambassador, proud and steady this time. He spoke to younger students about their rights and about the power of simply paying attention. "You don't need a badge to make a difference," Leo told one group of 8th graders. "You just need to notice what's happening around you and have the courage to act." Naomi watched him speak from the back of the room, arms crossed, smiling quietly. She remembered a scared 17-year-old with shaking hands outside a police station. That same boy now stood in front of a room, calm and sure of himself. Some changes take years. Others begin in 11 seconds of shaky video. Carol Jennings finally received real answers about her son 6 weeks later. Marcus's case reopened fully, with new leads pulled from old, ignored records. Naomi visited Carol in person to deliver each update, never through a phone call. "You didn't give up," Naomi told her. "That mattered more than you know." Carol held Naomi's hand for a long moment, saying nothing at all. Some kinds of gratitude don't need any words to carry weight. 3 months into her new role, Naomi drove to Denver to see Alvarez in person. They sat in his cramped office, coffee cooling between them, files stacked on every shelf. "You did good work out there," Alvarez said. "Better than I expected, truly." "I almost didn't survive day 1, Naomi said, smiling faintly at the memory. "You survived it fine," Alvarez said. "You made sure the truth survived too. That's what matters." He handed her a folder thin but heavy with meaning. 2 more towns are asking for the same kind of review, he said. Whenever you're ready. Naomi looked at the folder for a long moment before answering. Let Silver Creek breathe first, she said. Then we'll talk about the next one. Alvarez nodded, getting fully. Some fights needed room to heal before starting the next one. Walter Simmons, her old mentor, passed away quietly that same year in his sleep. Naomi spoke at his funeral, her voice steady even, though her hands shook slightly. He taught me that quiet people carry the loudest truths, she told the small crowd. I hope I made him proud, even just a little. Everyone in that room already knew the answer, though nobody needed to say it aloud. 6 months after, that cold Tuesday morning, Silver Creek looked different. Excessive force complaints dropped to almost zero across the entire department. Naomi required every officer to review real cases, not just training slides. She kept one photo on her new office desk, no longer turned face down. It showed her and her father, both in uniform, both smiling. She finally got why he loved this job, despite everything it cost him. A local reporter once asked Naomi why she chose the blind test at all. Why not walk in, with her title, her authority, her signed appointment letter? Naomi thought about the question for a moment, before answering truly. Because titles show you who people pretend to be, she said. Silence and patience show you who people really are underneath it all. She paused, then added one final thought before ending the interview. The town held a small event that spring, renaming the community room inside the station. They called it the Marcus Jennings Room, filled with photos and a simple wooden bench. Carol Jennings cut the ribbon herself, her hands steady for the first time in over a year. My son mattered, she said to the small crowd gathered outside. Someone finally proved that. Naomi stood near the back, letting Carol have the moment fully to herself. Frank Delgado came too, leaning on his cane, nodding quietly through the whole small event. He never expected to trust a police officer again, yet here he stood, watching closely. Maybe things really can change, he told a neighbor standing beside him. Denise aired the small event live, closing her report with a simple, honest line. Sometimes the truth needs someone patient enough to wait for it, she said. Leo watched the broadcast from his dorm room, 3 states away at journalism school. He texted Naomi that night, just 3 words. We did good. Naomi read the message twice before setting her phone down, smiling to herself quietly. Officer Hobbs taught me everything I needed to know in one slap. He just didn't know he was teaching anyone anything at all. Naomi Brooks still keeps that old gray windbreaker folded in her closet. She says it reminds her what silence can uncover when patience runs deep enough. Sometimes late at night, she takes it out and holds it for a moment. She remembers the cold morning air, the frost on the railing, the sting across her cheek. She remembers a shaking teenager who refused to look away when it mattered most. She remembers a town that learned, slowly and truly, how to hold power accountable. None of that came from a title or a badge pinned to her chest. It came from patience, from proof, and from people brave enough to speak the truth. It came from a folder of paperwork, an old recorder, and one honest teenager with a phone. That, Naomi believes, is the real lesson worth passing forward. Not every hero wears a badge. Sometimes the real hero just presses record. Somewhere in Silver Creek, a missing poster finally came down from a station wall. In its place hung a photo of a boy named Marcus, smiling, finally remembered.